Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, and thank you for tuning back into St. Andrew TV, a cure for your Monday blues. I am, of course, your host, Andrew, and today we are covering a gun that I recently just acquired. But what is this mysterious gun in this holster here? Well, let's take a peek, shall we? Oh! Not so fast. After this introduction, I'm going to pull the gun out of the holster and we are going to cover what is hiding in this fine piece of leather. So if you follow me along, you'll get to see what's in the holster. So if my outfit today is any minor hint, you should have a pretty good idea of what is about to come out of this hunk of leather here with the US insignia on it. That's another little minor hint. So you have a brief little overview of what we're about to pull out. These are faux ivory grips. So why don't we just slide this thing out and see what we have. This is a Cimarron Single Action Army clone. This is the Teddy Roosevelt, I guess, tribute piece, whatever the case. It is a Cimarron Teddy Roosevelt Single Action Army clone. Now, I have waited quite a long time to get my hands on a Single Action Army or a Single Action Army clone that is a 7.5-inch barrel. This is the original barrel that was contracted by the United States military. Now, I wanted a 7.5-inch barrel because of my long distance shooting with a handgun, and that's exactly what I got this one for. This is going to be my, I guess, my designated marksman pistol, if there was ever such a thing. Now, I am going to go over everything. You obviously know that it's a 7.5-inch cavalry barrel. But I'm going to go over the finer details that we have here, and that's going to be starting with the faux ivory grips. These are not real ivory. They're a material that's meant to look like ivory, and they're definitely not pearl. I don't know exactly what material they use to make these look like ivory, but it just feels like a very smooth and polished plastic. That's all it feels like. Nothing too impressive there, except that when it's hanging on your holster, it looks rather pretty. And it's got the TR initials right here for Theodore Roosevelt. Now let's move on to the finish. This is a nickel-plated Colt Single Action Army clone. Everything here is also engraved. If you see closely, I'm gonna probably zoom in here, this is laser engraved from the factory. I rather like that. I've never had a engraved revolver before. I don't think I've had a revolver this pretty before, with the exception of my 3rd gen Colt Single Action Army. For this, and this being designated as an exhibition shooter, this is definitely a pretty one for, I guess, my showmanship. Hopefully it's going to do some things that wow you, and it's also going to wow you while I wield this thing as well. Now, there are a few more things that I would like to point out. It does have the patent press right here of the original Colt Single Action Army when it was in the first stages of manufacturing. That is really cool because that is also on the Single Action Army. With an addition to that, other things that I like to point out to make this, roughly a replica of a 1st generation are the notches that the locking bolt goes into. They're very narrow, and the leads are very short, which is another thing that you find on 1st generation Colt Single Action Armies. They tried to recreate this one as a reproduction of a 1st generation, an 1873 Colt Single Action Army. And that is one of the things that drew me to this gun. I wanted it to be authentic, but if I were to go find a Colt Single Action Army first generation, I would probably be paying 4 to 5 times the amount I did for this thing. Along with the leads and the notches here, I would also like to point out that the ejector rod, the little piece here that you grab to eject exhausted cartridges, is a full circle. It's not that half moon that you see on reproductions normally, or later generation Colt Single Action Armies. This is historically accurate. This is what you would see on a first generation Colt or something trying to emulate that. When I saw this, I was blown away by the attention to detail. Just the little things like that really pique my interest. I love the historical accuracy of something like that. The other thing that you probably noticed means I have the gun in this position. It doesn't have the screws that undulate to get this base pin out. It has a screw, which is another thing that was historically accurate to the first generation Colt Single Action Armies. On the Uberti that I have, and even the third generation Colt Single Action Army that I possess, it has the little screws there that compress, and that's where you pull the base pin out. This has a screw, and that is another thing that piqued my interest when I was picking this out of the catalog. This is something that I didn't think they did repros of because it's kind of outdated. It doesn't, I don't think it works as well because this screw could become loose and it could fall out and you have a whole mess of issues. But I am a sucker for historical accuracies, and I definitely do appreciate the attention to the small details. Now, another thing this does particularly well in terms of historical accuracy, it is chambered in .45 Colt. And another big component to me purchasing this was it was chambered in that caliber, means I have a slew of them, and I even have some specialty rounds that were loaded for exhibition shooting. Thank you, Wade. That I will debut here soon, and hopefully it comes out of this guy here. But as we are talking about, the caliber that this thing eats, I would like to point out that when you fire, you're going to have to cock the hammer. And when you cock the hammer, you hear 4 clicks. Another thing that is historically accurate to the Colt Single Action Army. I do have the Uberti clone, which only has 3 clicks. It does not have the safety notch, which I find extremely desirable, especially when this cost me only $900 opposed to maybe $45,000, $5,000, and I would have to use some specialty loads because the first generation Colts can't handle smokeless powder. So I'm not certain what Teddy Roosevelt carried during the Spanish-American War, as he was a military man, nor his days as a sheriff in North Dakota. I'm not too sure on the historical portion of what gun he carried for a sidearm in either his, lawman days or his military days. I'm not even sure if he carried a single action army. That is up in the air to me. If anybody does know, please leave it down in the comments. I'll probably know. I'll probably go look it up after this video. But the Theodore Roosevelt thing didn't wow me too much. I think it's cool that there's engraving on the faux ivory grips, and I do think there's a TR right over here on the frame. That doesn't wow me too much. I think it was more or less the laser engraving, the nickel plated, the faux ivory grips, and it had the 7.5-inch barrel with these historically accurate bits and bobs of an original Colt Single Action Army. That is precisely why I bought it, and I can't wait to shoot it. No transfer bar either. That is another thing that I don't want. I don't want a transfer bar. I don't plan on carrying this around. If I do load 6, all 6 are getting shot directly after that. I don't much care for the transfer bar itself. But I would love to go shoot it. I would love to show you shooting it, but my right arm is on the fritz right now. There's a little numbness in there, and it's actually relatively tough to aim and actually hold it up. It is about 2.5 pounds, but arms on the fritz right now, but there is going to be a few videos that I do use this for some exhibition shooting. But I just wanted to share the new piece in my collection today. I also want to give a shout out to Tuco the Rat because this is essentially the last video that he put out, and I was in the perfect situation to maybe replicate some of his content. He's a smart guy. He does the exhibition shooting game from time to time, and you know, great art is steel. So there it is. There is the Cimarron Theodore Roosevelt Single Action Army clone. Nickel plated, laser engraved, faux ivory grips, you know, with all the historical accuracies that you would see on a first generation Colt. And for those of you wondering, I'm roughly dressed as one of Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders, which was his military regiment. And that's why I also have it sitting in the holster with the U.S. insignia on it. That wraps up today's video. I just wanted to cover this very beautiful gun that you will see in upcoming videos, and I wasn't ready to respond to all the comments asking what it was, so I thought I would just cover it now, and then when you see it, you're like, oh, that's a Cimarron Theodore Roosevelt, you know, Single Action Army clone. Thank you for getting this far into the video. If you've enjoyed today's video, please leave a like, or leave me a comment stating what you liked, or tell me what I should do next. I have a Patreon that is linked down in the description, or it should be appearing at the bottom of your screen right here. If you like the content that you see here on St. Andrew TV and would like to continue to support it, please feel free to go over to the Patreon and become a monthly member. I do not take ads nor sponsorships here on this channel, so it ensures you that everything you see is homegrown and grassrooted. It is completely community funded, or it comes out of my wallet directly. But that is not to say to feel any obligation to do so. Only if your means allow you to donate, because the content on YouTube will forever remain free. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed as of late, but for those of you who have come across this video or this channel, maybe because you like Western content, maybe you just like firearms and have a sweet appreciation for the ones that were developed prior to the turn of the 20th century. Or maybe you just stopped by because you thought, hey, you need a clean shave and you need to stop flapping your gums, get your arm fixed, and go give this thing a test drive. Think about hitting that subscribe button, because you're a daisy if you do.